I work the morning shift on Berlin's U-Bahn. Last Tuesday, an American woman boarded at Alexanderplatz, looked around at the silent car, and loudly asked, "Did someone die?" Nobody answered. She tried again. "Hello? Is this a funeral train?" A businessman glanced up from his newspaper, made brief eye contact, then returned to reading. She pulled out her phone and called someone. "Oh my God, I think I'm on a morning train. Everyone's just sitting here in complete silence. It's terrifying." I approached her at the next stop. "Miss, this is normal. Germans don't talk on trains." She stared at me. "What do you mean don't talk? That's not normal. That's dystopian." I explained that people prefer quiet during commute. She said Americans would never tolerate such oppression of basic human connection. Then she asked if she could play music to lighten the mood. When I said no, she told me I was participating in cultural suppression. She got off 3 stops later, still on the phone, telling someone about Germany's silent train cult. Last month, an American man tried to organize a car-wide conversation on the S-Bahn. He stood up and announced he was from Texas and wanted everyone to introduce themselves. One person put in earbuds. He took this as encouragement and started going row by row, asking names and occupations. A woman told him, "Neen." He said, "Come on, don't be shy." She closed her eyes. He interpreted this as performance art. Germans value commuting silence like Americans value personal space. We're about to see what happens when those two cultures collide in the most uncomfortable ways possible. I'm a ticket inspector in Munich. 3 weeks ago, I boarded a train and found an American woman moving through the car introducing herself to passengers. She had a notebook and was writing down names. "Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm building a community directory for this route. What's your name?" "Von man Sait Hayes Name, was bitte gehen Sie weg." She wrote it down phonetically. Another told her, "Ich spreche kein English," and she wrote, "Ich spreche kein English" in her community book. She told me she'd noticed Germans seemed isolated and lonely on trains, so she was creating a Munich Metro Friends network. She'd already collected 47 names. I explained this violated privacy norms. She said Americans had a constitutional right to assembly and free speech. I told her this was Germany, not America. She said human rights were universal. I asked her to stop. She asked if German law specifically prohibited making friends on public transport. I couldn't cite a specific statute. She rode that route for a week, building her directory. Germans started switching cars when they saw her coming. Someone filed a complaint. When transport police finally removed her, she shouted that Germany was criminalizing friendship. Her directory had 213 entries. All of them were Germans telling her to go away in various languages. I work at Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof's information desk. Last month, an American asked why there were no conversation cars on German trains. I told him German trains didn't have designated talking areas because talking wasn't encouraged anywhere. He said that violated the Geneva Convention's provisions on mental health. He demanded to speak with Deutsche Bahn CEO about implementing social cars, where Americans could talk freely. I explained the CEO doesn't take walk-in appointments. He said in America, customer complaints go straight to the top. I suggested he email customer service. He asked why Germany was so afraid of human connection that we built entire systems to prevent it. He sat in the station for 2 hours, trying to convince passing Germans to sign a petition for conversation cars. He collected 3 signatures. All were other tourists. One was his wife. He filed a formal complaint with the EU about Germany's psychological isolation policies. Transport authorities sent him a brochure about quiet car etiquette. He thought it was satire. I'm a conductor on the Hamburg-Berlin route. 2 months ago, an American family boarded with portable speakers. The father announced they were going to play road trip music to make the journey more fun. He pressed play. Country music filled the car. Germans looked up simultaneously, a unified expression of horror. One woman pressed the emergency call button. The father waved at her cheerfully. I arrived within 90 seconds. He explained that in America, families play music during long drives to stay entertained. I told him this was a train, not a car, and other passengers expected silence. He said he'd paid for tickets and deserved to enjoy his journey. I explained German transport law requires passengers not to disturb others. He asked what specific decibel level counted as disturbance. I told him any music audible to other passengers. He turned the volume to the lowest setting. You could still hear it. I asked him to use headphones. He said his family enjoyed shared listening experiences. His wife added that Americans valued togetherness over isolation. Their teenage daughter looked like she wanted to disappear. I told them I'd have to remove them at the next stop if the music continued. He turned it off, then asked if humming was allowed. I said technically yes, but socially no. He hummed for 20 minutes. Nobody sat near them for the rest of the journey. I manage a cafe in Berlin's Ostbahnhof station. Last week, an American tried to start a commuter connection club that met in my cafe before morning trains. He posted flyers around the station. Tired of silent commutes? Join us for pre-train conversation. He expected 50 people. 4 showed up. All American tourists. They sat at a table talking loudly about how weird German silence was. German customers moved to tables farther away. The organizer took this as proof Germans needed his club. He approached a German man drinking coffee alone and invited him to join. The man said he was reading. The American said, "Exactly. You're isolated. Come talk to us." The man left. The next morning, he returned with homemade name tags reading, "Conversation welcomed here." He tried to give them to German commuters. One woman accepted it, looked at it, and threw it in the trash while maintaining eye contact. He told me Germans were suffering from normalized social anxiety. I told him Germans simply preferred quiet mornings. He said American psychological research proved humans needed morning social interaction. I told him German research proved humans needed morning silence. He asked if I had sources. I said yes. Every German on every train. He ran the club for 2 weeks. Attendance never exceeded 4. All tourists. The station manager asked him to stop after Germans started avoiding that section of the station. I'm a train driver based in Cologne. 3 months ago, an American woman filed a complaint because nobody talked to her during her 40-minute commute. She'd attempted to start conversations with 12 people. All had politely declined or ignored her. She believed this constituted collective harassment. Her complaint stated that in America, refusing to acknowledge someone who speaks to you is considered rude. She felt socially assaulted by being systematically ignored. She wanted Deutsche Bahn to implement mandatory conversation response policies. Her complaint was 17 pages long. She included testimonials from other Americans who'd experienced the silent treatment on German trains. One wrote about feeling invisible and dehumanized when Germans wouldn't discuss the weather. Another described German commuter silence as psychological warfare against extroverts. A third compared it to solitary confinement. The complaint went to regional management. They sent a formal response explaining that German passengers exercising their right to silence doesn't constitute harassment. She replied asking if Germany had considered that maybe their entire culture was wrong. Management didn't respond to that. She posted her complaint online. American expat forums debated it for weeks. Germans who saw it were confused about what the complaint was even about. I work at Stuttgart's Transit Authority. Last month, we received a proposal from an American startup wanting to launch talk-time trains in Germany. Their concept: designated cars where talking was encouraged and silence was banned. They projected high demand from conversation-starved Germans. Their market research consisted of interviewing 23 American tourists who all agreed Germans seemed sad on trains. They designed an app where passengers could schedule conversations with seatmates based on shared interest. They'd created conversation starter cards in English and German. Topics included American freedom versus German efficiency, and why is everyone so quiet? They pitched this to our board. They showed slides about how American tech companies revolutionized social interaction. They explained Germans didn't know they wanted conversation cars until Americans showed them. They projected that within 5 years, silent cars would be extinct. One board member asked if they'd considered that Germans chose silence deliberately. They said that was culturally conditioned false preference. Their business plan included expanding to Austria and Switzerland. They'd secured investor funding from Americans who'd visited Germany and found trains depressing. The pitch concluded with them saying they were going to save German commuters from themselves. Our board rejected the proposal unanimously. They seemed genuinely shocked. One asked if we were required to accept innovation. We said no. They left calling us change-resistant bureaucrats. I'm a psychology professor at Heidelberg University. Last semester, an American exchange student wrote her thesis on what she called German commuter dissociation syndrome. Her central argument was that German train silence represented collective trauma response from World War II. She interviewed 60 Germans about why they didn't talk on trains. Common responses: I'm tired, I'm reading, I don't want to. She interpreted all of these as trauma avoidance. She created graphs showing correlation between Germany's history and commuter silence rate. She compared Berlin's U-Bahn to New York's subway, presenting American chattiness as psychologically healthier. Her methodology included observing German trains for 2 months. She noted that Germans who did talk on trains were usually tourists or teenagers. She theorized that authentic Germans had lost the ability to engage in spontaneous social interaction. She proposed a national program to reteach Germans natural human communication patterns. Her evidence was that Americans talk on subways, therefore talking on trains is normal human behavior. During her defense, a German professor asked if she'd considered that different cultures have different social norms. She said she had, but some norms were objectively healthier than others. Another professor asked if she'd researched whether Germans were actually unhappy with train silence. She said happiness metrics weren't reliable when measuring normalized dysfunction. She cited American research on loneliness. She presented German efficiency as a coping mechanism for emotional suppression. She concluded that German train silence was a public health crisis requiring American-style intervention. The committee failed her thesis. She filed a complaint claiming cultural bias. She returned to America and wrote a blog post about how German academia silences challenging ideas. The irony was lost on her. Here's what Americans don't understand. German silence isn't fear or trauma or loneliness. It's preference. We value the quiet space between leaving home and arriving at work. We're not suffering in that silence. We're recharging in it. The real culture clash isn't that Germans are quiet. It's that Americans can't imagine that someone might genuinely prefer to be. Next time, we're covering Americans who discover that European pharmacies won't sell them everything WebMD suggested. The words, "I'm basically a doctor," will be used more times than you'd think possible.